Configuring vMotion in vSphere 6. Okay. We have now two VMs, server 1 and server 2, right? And these two VMs, they are up and running, and they have some IP addresses. The IP address assigned to it, correct? If you recall from previous video, we created a template, and on template I now provisioned this on the machine server 2. So I have two VMs running, server 1 and server 2. And right now, server 1 is running on host ESXi1, right? And server 2 is running on ESXi3. What if I need to perform maintenance on ESXi3? What will happen to server 2? Let's say server 2 is a production server and there is an urgent requirement for maintenance, or let's say we have a workload and ESXi3 is under stress and ESXi2, for example, have enough free memory and CPU resources, and for performance reason I would like server 2 to run on ESXi2. What are my chances? If you're thinking like shut down server 2 and start from ESXi2, well, it's a downtime, isn't it? And my sessions will be terminated. My users which are connected to it, they will be terminated. They might lose their work. So there is something called vMotion, or it's like equivalent to live migration in Hyper-V, where you can perform all this activity while virtual machine is up and running. What will happen that if let's say server 2, which is running on ESXi3 right now, if I migrate or vMotion this server 2 to ESXi2, server 2 will continue to run, because what basically server 2 vmdk file or disk, which is vmdk disk, resides on shared storage, and ESXi3 has access to it as well as ESXi2, right? So when I will initiate the live migration or vMotion, ESXi2 will take control of that vmdk, and whatever session or which is running on ESXi3, the memory of that virtual machine which is running of server 2, which is taking from ESXi3, that information, that's all session information, will be migrated over VM kernel network to ESXi2. Like currently server 2 is taking its CPU and memory from ESXi3. If I do vMotion, then after vMotion, server 2 will continue to run, and it will start taking its CPU and memory resources from ESXi2. Whatever users are connected to this server 2, they hardly feel anything. They won't feel a thing, because usually it is not just usually, it's a non-disruptive operation. They won't notice a thing. Hardly we will miss a single thing, or sometimes even that we won't miss it. So it will transfer the control. So vMotion will transfer the control from ESXi2 to ESXi3 without shutting down the VM. Well, when we will initiate the vMotion, we will choose the destination where I would like to vMotion this server. I will choose, let's say, ESXi2. So what will happen, ESXi3, which is currently reading the vMDK disk, handles control to ESXi2. So ESXi2 will start, take the ownership of that vMDK file, and the whatever sessions are running on ESXi 3 related to server 2 will be migrated over VM kernel network to ESXi 3. So ESXi 3 will be responsible for reading VMDK and providing memory, CPU, as well as network to server 2. How vMotion happens? Who does that? Do we do it manually or system do that? Well, it happens both ways. We do vMotions when sometimes we might need to move virtual machine from here to there. For example, I need to perform maintenance on ESXi 3 and right now server 2 is running on ESXi 3. So what I can do vMotion or server 2 to ESXi 2 or ESXi 1. That's the manual intervention. As an admin, you will do it, right? In addition to that, there is a feature in vSphere called DRS, which we will talk about in future video, where system automatically vMotion virtual machines in order to balance the load. Whenever system thinks that, okay, server 2 will get a better performance if it's vMotion to ES6i1, because ES6i1 has more free resources. Resources means, again, memory and CPU, and because disk is the same, eventually we will all read the same disk which is on shared storage. So we'll say, okay, it will get a better performance because ESXi3 under stress, and so server 2 will get a better performance if it's migrated or vMotion to ESXi2. So system using DRS, it will automatically initiate vMotion. So server 2 will be migrated to ESXi2. DRS requires Enterprise or Enterprise Plus licensing. It's not a part of a standard feature set, standard licensing. Last time when I checked, it wasn't there. So if somebody who has a standard version of vSphere, then you will miss out on DRS, which is a very good feature. So let's configure vMotion. As I said, vMotion requires VM kernel network. VM kernel network means a separate network, of course, a different IP range. Typically, in your environment, preferably, it will be a separate VLAN. In my case, I'm not using VLAN, so I can use the same network. You can even use the same network if you have enough bandwidth. But usually it's a different, VLAN. And you can use an existing network as well. You can use an existing VM kernel and just enable it for vMotion traffic. I will show you that. So let's do vMotion. vMotion requires a spatial networking, as I said, VM kernel networking. So where should we go? Where should we go? What do you think? If I go to, don't forget we are using distributed switch, isn't it? If I go to my data center and distributed switch, right? This is my distributed switch, and these are my distributed port groups, correct? I have distributed management network, distributed VM network, and distributed VM network 2. These two networks for my virtual machines, this one for the management network. I can enable this management network because I can do that. I can enable this one for vMotion because this is a VM kernel network. I cannot enable VM network or VM network 2 for vMotion because it's a virtual machine network. So if I create, let's say, another distributed port group, okay, and I will say vMotion. Okay. Oh, sorry. Oh. Okay. Static binding number 4, slow VLANs in my case. Okay. We have just created a port group. It has nothing right now. So if we go to distributed switch, right, and we go to add host to this distributed switch and migrate physical virtual networking adapter, right, and choose manage host networking, select all attached hosts. Now what I would like to do, manage physical network adapter, no. Migrate virtual machine networking, no. We have already migrated from standard to distributed, right? We want to do this, manage VM kernel adapter, which says add or migrate VM kernel network adapters to this distributed switch. Assign them to distributed port groups, configure VM kernel adapter settings, or remove existing ones, right? We want to add VM kernel adapter, so we will choose this one, or we can configure existing VM kernel adapter. I will show you both ways. So if I select this option and go next, right? Now this is what they have, correct? VM kernel. So if I say new adapter, it will say select an existing network. I can browse and I can choose this D vMotion or distributed vMotion. Next, network level is there, TCP, and I can enable this for vMotion traffic. So if it means this virtual machine or VM kernel network will carry vMotion traffic. When the VM will be migrated, the session information, like memory session information from, let's say, for example, ESXi3 to ESXi2 will be transferred using this VM kernel network port group. So I'm enabling this service here. IP address. Specify the IP address for ESXi1. Right? What to do? For ESXi, here I can specify an IP address. As I'm not using different VLANs, so I to specify an IP address of this range. So I can specify another IP address. For example, the IP address of this ESXi host is 241. I can choose maybe 192.168.0.111. So 0 dot ESXi1, so 111. Subnet mask 255. Sorry, 255.255.0. Okay. And it's done. This is one of the options. Correct. Here it is. Correct. Right. How about if I don't want to do that? Because eventually, let's say I have a network card, which is 10 gig. I have 4 10 gig cards or 10 gig single card, which is more than enough for more than capable for handling uh, management traffic as well as vMotion traffic, because vMotion will occur. Vmotion will occur when either as an administrator I want to move or migrate VMs from one host to another host, or using DRS, which is distributed scheduling resources. And when DRS will kick in only when there is a contention of resources. Let's say I plan my data center well and I have enough computing power that it doesn't require system to even kick DRS in, because all my hosts with my current workload have more than enough capacity to serve my existing VMs as well as to accommodate future VMs. So in this case, we won't see DRS happening or taking effect. And we are, as far as the manual virtual or vMotion is concerned, that you will do what that you might do occasionally, correct? So in this case, what I can do, let's say I can just simply remove it, right? Again, I will go, you can do this, sorry, I did not select that, that's why it created the ESX adapter for ESXi1 only. But if I do the template mode, I have to do, then one, I will create for 1 and it will create for 2 and 3, like what I demonstrated to you in previous in distributed switch video. So let's not talk about this. So let's say, okay, no worries. If I select this and choose this one, manage kernel adapters, right? And we have what? We have this one, right? Distributed switch. This is still on vSwitch 1, but this is on distributed switch. I can edit this adapter and I can enable this existing one for vMotion traffic. It already has IP address, so no need to specify additional IP address, because I know this VM kernel 0 is more than capable. The physical cards, because all this VM kernel, it's basically load balanced to 3 different physical NICs. Don't forget that. In virtual switch, we have created 3 uplinks. So basically, now virtual switch is balancing load between 3 physical network cards. And I have enough workload, so what I can do, I can enable vMotion for existing VM kernel. So this VM kernel will serve for management as well as it will carry vMotion traffic as well. So if I do that and say apply to all, again the same thing we have to do. Remember 192.168.0.241, I think that's #2. Oh, sorry, 242 #3 #2, which is 242 and 243. So this way you can enable all of them. So if I do say apply, okay, next, no impact. That means the VM network adapter VM kernel 0, it's been modified to, and it's been enabled for vMotion. So it's your choice. At the end, you want to create a separate VM kernel. If you want to create separate VM kernel, I would suggest then use a dedicated VLAN for it. If you think, like, again, if you have enough power, enough bandwidth, your network cards are very high speed, and of course you're using load balancing. Like in my case, I have 3 1 gig cards, load balanced using distributed switch. and for lab environment, very minimal load. So of course I can afford to enable VM kernel for vMotion traffic on my management network. But in your case, you may like to create a different VLAN. Maybe you want to use the same strategy, uh, but you like to create a different port group VM kernel network, like I showed to you in this video, like created vMotion, and you will assign a different VLAN to it, but it will use the existing card for sure. So this is the right way to do it. Uh, you can of course create a different VM kernel adapter, assign it to different VLAN, assign those IPs to the of that VLAN to this VM kernel, to the new VM kernel, and you use this port group, and you use this distributed switch. So this is how you can do it, or you can enable existing one, like what I'm doing in my lab. So I say finish. And now it's applying changes. So if I go now, just to make sure, say manage host networking, okay, attached host, and I select all of them. I don't want to do that, but you're just checking only. No, my just one kernel. This is VMK, right? So if I say edit adapter, I'll see the vMotion traffic is enabled. This we did it by ourselves, and then because we configured in template mode, the system did that for ESXi2 and ESXi3. Let's see, did it do that or not? Yes, it did enable for ESXi2 and it did enable for ESXi3. Awesome. So vMotion is enabled. So let's try migrating. So I have a server 2. What's a server 2 IP? It's 192.168.0.152, right? So just let me pull up quickly. Let's see, ping 192.168.0.252. I'm sure 252. Oh, ping 192.168.0.252. It's 252 or 152? 152. Come on. Okay. You will keep it pinging, and what I'll do, server 2, right click, keep this in mind, it's on ESXi3. See, it's on ESXi3. So I'll right click and say migrate. Now, change compute resource only means migrate the virtual machine to another host or cluster. This is what I want. Compute resource means like memory and CPU. Change storage only means I want to move the virtual machine VMDK from one data store to another data store, or maybe data store cluster, which I would like to show you in another video, or maybe both. Maybe I want to move the virtual machine for computing resources as well as I want to move the VMDK files from one data store to another data store, or one data store to data store cluster, or from one data store cluster to another data store cluster. But that requires VM to be powered off. So if I choose this, I have, again, it's more granular. But I want only this. Okay. I think no. I think now maybe it doesn't require to be powered off. We will test anyway. Let's do vMotion just, which is migrating the VM. So VM will be continue running. As you know, I'm just pinging it. And next, now remember it's on ESXi3. I will choose ESXi2. I'm saying migrate to ESXi2, compatibility check succeed. I have no mounted DVDs or anything, which is good. And even if I have, make sure it's on the shared storage or shared resource, not on the local system or the local data store. Next, select network. This is another enhancement. So right now the source network is DVM network. Where you will like the destination VM network. I can keep the same. I can say keep DVM network 2. In my case the same because it's all distributed network. All hosts have the definition of same networks. And next, schedule with high priority. If you go to advanced, it's like that's a basic one. Okay, so schedule with high priority and finish. And now it's doing this migrate. See, relocating VM. And let's see. Keep this your eye here, guys. Here and here. 44% migrated. No pings moved. VM is still running. 50. It's migrating the VM. See, one timeout here. We missed one timeout. We missed one ping. It's not finished yet though. And here, it's voila, it's done. And see, the host is changed. Now it's ESXi2. So VM is running on ESXi2, server 2, which is this one. Oh, I'm sorry, disconnected. The console has been disconnected. So VM is running on ESXi2 now, and open console. And now it's taking its CPU and memory and network from ESXi2 without shutting down. So ESXi3 now have no VMs. How do I know? Well, it depends. If you go to related objects, you can see virtual machines, ESXi3, no VMs running, but ESXi2, you have server 2 running here. And same thing you can see from here, from server 2. You'll see it's running on ESXi2. So that's how vMotion works, and we have tested vMotion, sorry, we have configured vMotion, and we have tested vMotion, and we have successfully completed that test. So this, guys, this is how vMotion works, and see you in another video.